I just went from this to this. And it costs less than a cheeseburger from McDonald's, at least for me. But that's because I have the wood already. For you, it'd probably be below $50. In this video, we'll show you 5 steps in building hanging shelves with the least amount of cuts and the least amount of wasted wood possible.
Bring it on, brothers.
The first step is to measure the area where you'll put the shelf. You'll need 3 measurements: the width, the height, and the depth of the shelf. If you know what's going on the shelves, measure those items and give yourself a couple inches of wiggle room. My boxes are 18 inches wide, 16 inches tall, and 22 inches deep. I have 8 boxes, so I'm going to build 2 shelves that are 8 feet wide, 22 inches tall, and 24 inches deep. That should give me enough wiggle room on the width, the height, and the depth. I've also chosen these measurements because it'll be less wood that I have to cut, and it's going to be less wood waste. And the reason why is because the wood I have available to me is 8 feet long. I have 2x4s, 2x3s, and 4 feet by 8 feet plywood. So most of that wood is already the exact length that I needed. So when you're taking measurements and looking at the wood that's available to you either at a hardware store or maybe you have some on hand, you may want to put that into consideration as you're looking at how big you want your shelf and how tall and everything else. And that takes us to the second step: buying the material. The price of the material will depend on the thickness of the material, and that will depend on what you're putting on the shelf. If you're putting heavy boxes, heavy machinery on these shelves, you're gonna want thicker wood that's stronger, and that's gonna cost more. If you're putting something that's lighter, you can get away with thinner wood, and that will cost you less. If you'd like to build the same exact shelves as what I have, here's that list. Keep in mind, I used 2x3s because I had them on hand. I probably would have done 2x4s because I am putting heavier things on these shelves. But if you're putting lighter things, 2x3s are great. 2x2s, I've seen people using those too, so you could do that as well. Once you have the material, move to the third step: cut the wood. The best way to cut 2x4s, 2x3s, 2x2s is usually with a miter saw. And the best way to cut plywood is with a table saw. Before you start cutting, I find it's easier to measure and mark all the wood first. Make sure to measure twice so you can cut once. I made that mistake, measured once, and I was forced to cut twice. Cutting the 2x4s and 2x3s on a miter saw was super easy. I don't have a table saw. If you're in the same position as me, this is what I did to solve that issue. Lay down some 2x4s, place the plywood on top, anchor a straight board to the plywood, and then cut the wood. My blade has a 1-inch space on the left side, so I placed a straight board with clamps at 23 inches so I could cut the board exactly in half at 24 inches, giving me 2 shelves to work with. In total, I only made 5 cuts for this project. Actually, I made 6. Measure twice, cut once, or measure once and cut twice like me. Once you've cut the wood, move to the 4th step: assemble the shelves. There are a couple ways to do this. You can assemble the shelves as you're building them and anchoring them onto the wall, or you can do what I did: assemble the shelves on the ground, lift them up, and hook them to the wall. To assemble the shelves, I actually used drywall screws. They're 1.5 inches long, and they worked perfect for attaching the plywood to the 2x3s. When I attach the 2x3s together, I use 3-inch screws. I'll leave a link down below for either of those screws. After you assemble and screw the shelves together, it's time to move on to the next step, anchor the shelves to the ceiling and to the wall. Before I explain this step, I did it wrong. Don't do what I did. I started by attaching the shelves to the wall with screws, and then I attached them to the vertical boards that attach to the ceiling. What you want to do is start from the top down. Attach the ceiling anchor first, then the vertical boards, then attach your shelves. When attaching the ceiling anchor, and any of the anchors for that matter, make sure to use a stud finder. Otherwise, those screws will be more loose than Kevin Bacon. I use 3-inch screws to attach the 2x4s to the ceiling. I use the same screws to attach the vertical bars and to attach the shelves. After you've screwed in your ceiling anchors and the vertical bars, it's time to hoist those shelves up and put them in place. Again, I did it backwards and I did it alone. I would suggest getting help for this step. However, if you're by yourself and you have a couple extra ladders or something to help you using leverage to lift up that shelf, you can do what I did. Despite doing it backwards, once you get your shelf up and around where you need it to be, screw in your first screw. Just something to help it stay in place. You'll then want to use a level to make sure the left side and right side are not drooping at all. And you also want to look at the front and back, make sure it's not tilting backwards or forwards. I use the 3-inch screws to screw those in too. Eventually, I plan to paint the shelves, add doors to them. Maybe I'll do a video on those. Oh, one last thing. If you're looking for great storage containers, I put a description in the link below. And that's it.